of admiration I actually have for China. Because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say, we need to go green as fast as we need to start investing in solar. I mean, there is a flexibility that I know Stephen Harper must dream about, of having a dictatorship that he could do everything he wanted, that I find quite interesting.
And the trouble with that is that China is very outward looking now, what was for many centuries a more inward looking place. And technology, well, in many ways, China rivals or even exceeds North American technology. I think, for example, of the social media app called TikTok. A lot of journalists and politicians love Twitter, and that probably is the dominant public square for people talking politics and things like that. But for younger Canadians, for teenagers, TikTok is indeed dominant. TikTok is owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company, and I'm on TikTok, which is probably a bad idea because it's obviously malware and spyware, but it gives me a window into the propaganda that is pumped out relentlessly on that app, which surely serves the masters of TikTok, which at the end of the day is the Chinese government. There have been discussions in both Canada and the United States to ban TikTok. But I was startled and pleased and surprised to learn that the government of Canada recently announced a ban of another Chinese app on government devices. I did not know this. But it was a story written by our friend Andy Lee, the special rebel rapporteur and investigative journalist. What a delight to have her on the show. Andy, great to see you again, and good work here. You really cover a beat that so few Canadian journalists do. Thanks for doing it. Let's go through this article, and welcome back, by the way.
Yeah, we haven't seen each other in a while. You've been very busy. So yeah, let's dig into it. This is really good news for us. It's a good step. It's an important step. It brings us more into line with our allies, which is really, really important right now when we've maybe lost some confidence. So the federal government moved to ban WeChat from federal devices, and this follows on something that they did earlier on in the year when they did do a TikTok ban as well on federal government devices and things like that. So we know that both are, used by ByteDance is one of the, the parent company of TikTok, and there's huge concerns that, and you touched upon that. So, but Tencent is, the big fish kind of, and Tencent runs WeChat. And, it sort of runs a vast surveillance network of all kinds of applications. It doesn't just do WeChat. It's a massive entity. It's one that we've invested heavily into. And that was something I need to look into more, is at one point, I believe it was last year, it was our largest private equity foreign holding in the Canada Pension Plan.
Really?
Largest.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, fascinating. So I'll have to dig that up. That's on my list of things to do and to write about, is why. And it dwarfed all others. It wasn't even close. It was our largest foreign private equity investment.
Hey, before we go any further, I think many of our viewers know about TikTok, even if they're not on it. And I deleted it and then I went back to it because I actually want to know what the other side is saying, even though I'm sure it's spying on me. I actually learn things from TikTok about what the other half of the world is saying. That's why I'm on it. At least that's my excuse for being on it. But I don't think many Canadians who are not Chinese Canadians know what WeChat is. Can you explain for our viewers who have maybe never heard of WeChat? What is it? It's sort of an everything app, isn't it? It's not just social media, it's commerce, it's money, it's banking. I've never had an account on WeChat. What is it like? And by the way, can non-Chinese people make use of it, or is it basically a Chinese language app?
It is. So WeChat was a new tool for me to use. And yes, I do realize that it's probably collecting information and privacy data and things like that. So I was really, really reluctant to install it, but I did. So it's a vast network of all kinds of things. Yes, it's social media. Yes, it's news. Yes, it's commerce and marketplace. And so it's, and you can do payments through WeChat and things like that. So it's a vast network. fascinating, the things that you can find there that you can't find anything else. And yes, absolutely, if you want a WeChat account, you can start a WeChat account. You need to send a QR code to somebody else who's on there, and they will sort of get you in. And so this is what we've done, is we've created our own WeChat network within this ecosystem, and we go in and we look for things and we find things. We get into people's chats and stuff like that. We got a lot of information on the foreign agent registry protest through WeChat.
You know, it's very interesting you say that. We had a Chinese Canadian staffer at Rebel News for whom WeChat was their number one source of news, which is interesting to me. Including news about Canada. And what I thought was interesting about that is, imagine getting your news about Canada filtered through China. I think there's a lot of Canadians who that's how they live. And that's another concern there. But it was a spyware, malware issue that made the Canadian government ban it. Am I right?
So, yeah. So the exact statement was, WeChat's application data collection methods provide considerable access to the device's contents. So I think that the worry is that maybe they could backdoor their way into federal devices where they might be able to pull other information or sensitive information off of the government devices. So a very, very good move banning it. Not really sure why it was on there in the first place. Although another thing most people probably don't know is one of Justin Trudeau's election pledges, after he won the election back in 2016, and he was doing his China tours and things, he said that one of the main things that he wanted to do was increase his presence on WeChat to connect with the Chinese people. That was, and I've got that article, and I thought, well, wow, that's a fascinating thing, and I never knew that. So yeah, our politicians have been using it, and some of them have got busted doing some strange things on there. Like Joyce Murray, she was our digital minister, and it ended up that some of her posts had advertisements that were collecting funds for a lawsuit to try to sue Global News, who's been at the forefront of breaking a lot of foreign interference stories.
It's so clearly an instrument of foreign policy for the government. Here, let me quote from your article. By the way, you had a great article about this a few days ago on the Rebel News website. The headline is, China protests Canadian WeChat ban on government devices. So it's not just the company. Let me read what the government of China said. So you know they're mad because they're weighing in on behalf of the company, which is just obviously fused and connected to the government. China strongly opposes Canada's latest ban on China's social media app WeChat, and urges the Canadian side to discard ideological prejudice, abide by economic principles, and provide fair, just, and non-discriminative business environment for Chinese companies, Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said. So you know what? I'm sort of surprised to read this, Andy, because everything I've seen from Justin Trudeau has been to capitulate to the People's Republic of China. Maybe this was just too far, and maybe our Five Eyes allies said, look, we just cannot abide the government of Canada letting the Chinese government spy on all your bureaucrats. Maybe a decision as wise as this was not made in Ottawa. Maybe it was made in Washington or London.
Yeah, well, I think that was part of it. It was trying to bring us more into line with our allies and make sure that we're safeguarding national security and things like that. So a good move on their part, a little bit too little, too late. I think too that there's just been too much questions raised about how the application has been used in interference. There are definite indications that WeChat was used for foreign election interference. That was put out CSIS docs and memos. Do we know how many ridings they interfered in? Not exactly, but there's no doubt that there was interference, and we were able to trace that back to certain state actors. It's hard because you don't want to stifle free speech, and we have a huge Chinese Canadian population, and yes, they do use this as a resource, and a lot of them probably aren't using it for nefarious purposes, right? They're going there to get their news and things like that. The issue comes when you have state-sponsored campaigns, and that's what we've seen, and that's what the problem came in. So this report, this condemnation that was put out by the foreign minister of China, it went through Global Times. So we did some work earlier on Global Times. So Global Times operates under the umbrella of the People's Daily Press. And so that's the official news outlet of the Central Party of the Chinese Communist Party. So this is their sort of official state propaganda mouthpiece. Back when earlier on in the year, we had an alert put out by Global Affairs Canada saying that they had detected a disinformation campaign that they believed originated from the Chinese Communist Party. They didn't say what state actors, but they felt fairly confident that it was state actors, and it was a disinformation campaign against Michael Chong. Right. Of course, Michael Chong has been the victim of many of these disinformation campaigns. But they didn't say who actually did it, but we were able to find out pretty quickly who did it through WeChat. So I went on WeChat and traced back where these articles were coming from. And they were coming from something called Global People magazine.